Welcome to Room with Destination Homes, where you'll discover details about new home construction from different perspectives. If you're curious or have questions about home building, you'll find answers as we go room to room.
Hi, I'm Ryan with Destination Homes, and this is another episode of Room to Room. And today we are in Daybreak in South Jordan, Utah, and I'm pleased to have a special guest. With me is Cameron Jackson, who is the Vice President of Residential Operations for the Larry H. Miller Real Estate Group.
You got it right.
I get it right.
I'm impressed.
Thank you.
That was really good.
Okay, that was the hardest part of this whole thing.
All
right. Cameron and I have worked together for a long time and known each other for a long time because of all the people I know here that have worked on Daybreak, he has had an opportunity to touch everything. So we're really excited to kind of hear the story from him and kind of find out where Daybreak has been, where it's going, and all the interesting things in between. So first of all, I want to ask you about how you first came to know about the opportunity to work out here in South Jordan with Daybreak. Now this would probably be, if memory serves, maybe the 2004 era. Okay, let's start there.
Yeah, so Daybreak started in 2004, and it was actually like leftover excess mining land from the Kennecott mine. So they were the original owners, and they were kind of the visionaries that came up with the big idea because they saw that the valley was growing and saw an opportunity to contribute and do something, really cool, not just a development, but something that people would actually really come to love and a place people really want to be.
Yeah, and were there places that kind of inspired this? This is brand new. Back then, this was really a brand new concept for the valley.
For sure.
And, I'm familiar with a couple of places, but, what was the homework that, it was Kennecott that was doing it, right?
Uh-huh.
What kind of homework were they doing to kind of figure out, hey, how is this development going to work and how are we going to make it special?
So one of the original goals, and it's still a goal, is to build enduring communities that last. And so you want to have a timeless nature to the place, and the architecture of the housing plays a really big role in that. And so what they did for homework is they studied a lot of the original neighborhoods from Salt Lake City. So we looked at Harvard and Yale, Sugar House, the avenues, because those neighborhoods, they're all 100 years old now, but they're some of the most desirable neighborhoods in Salt Lake City because they have that timeless quality to them. And so as we worked through the planning for Daybreak, and as we've worked with builders such as Destination Homes, we've sought to really sort of recreate a lot of that because we know that, 100 years from now, these neighborhoods will still be really desirable places that people want to be.
Yeah. And then there was the grand opening, which you're around to, help put that together. I'll just share with you quickly my experience, and then I want all the details from your vantage point. But I remember just kind of coming up the hill, it was Kestrel Rise, I think.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's just this little pocket of homes, about 20 model homes. And as the sun went down, all the street lights just illuminated this space, and you really felt like you were on a movie set. Mm-hmm. You'd never been in this cool of a neighborhood before, and there was music going, and it was like I was smelling cherry pie from the pie eating contest, and it was amazing. And I will never forget that experience, and I love thinking about that as we have seen Daybreak grow. But tell us about your experience putting that together.
Well, and I think you're right because, when that was created, nothing like that had been done in the Salt Lake Valley really ever.
Yeah.
And so what we were trying to present to people and help people, really understand, and my part in it was actually quite small at that point in time, but what we were trying to, create for people was, a feeling. And what we were trying to do was get people to be able to visualize and really tap into all their senses, because that's what really a neighborhood really does for people.
Yeah.
Is, architecture's one thing, but it's really about the experience and it's about building community. And that's really what Daybreak has been all about, since the very beginning was, creating ways through walkability and through front porches that people can meet and know their neighbors and have those, meaningful interactions rather than just driving in the garage and closing it and going about your day.
Yeah.
So it was really and people, that resonates with people, but you have to show it to them. And that's really what that was about, was to give them, you called it a movie set, which I think was appropriate because we were trying to create this little, teaching opportunity to
Yeah.
help people see it, feel it, and go, okay, and just kind of help them connect the dots.
Well, and I remember it was just, like I said, 20 or so model homes and then nothing.
Right.
Like for as far as the eye could see.
Yeah.
And you think about like back then, they're like, well, the plan is to do this and this and this. And it's almost kind of like if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Like they built it, people caught the vision, and then all of a sudden, we start filling up that first village, and then there's the second one. Maybe give us a Cliff's Notes version of, through the decades, what it's been like to be here working with the community here and building something really special along the Wasatch Front. Tell us some of the highlights.
Well, it's been interesting, as you mentioned, because I think when we first opened it up, a lot of people, there were detractors that said, well, this is never going to work.
Yeah.
And this is a terrible idea. And it's really, we've often, and it may be a little bit, lofty, but we've always compared what we've done here to, a company like Apple, where people don't always know what they want until you show it to them.
That's right.
And over the years, as we've rolled out different elements of the community, it started with, architecture and small lots and the trade-off of walking to a park. And then it was a village center with Soda Row and the lake and, having all of these things in a neighborhood. And so as those things rolled out little by little over the years, people began to, catch the vision. And it really started to take off from there because it was less about, a pretty picture on the wall of something that was going to be and a real, living, breathing community that people could walk around and experience, that they started to get it. And it resonates with people because it's really built for, human scale rather than a suburb that you just drive in and out of.
Yeah. Over the years, there have been high points, low points in the market, some crazy challenges.
Sure.
Talk about some of those things and maybe how Daybreak has really risen to the challenge.
Yeah. Well, so when you're developing a large-scale community like this, there's sort of those gut check times in the market where, we've said sort of the cold wind of reality and economics blows in and wants to kind of, destroy your party that you're having where you're trying to create something cool. And, we had some difficult times during those years where, during the recession where, the housing market and the demand really, started to taper down quite a bit just because of what was going on in the economy. But one of the really cool things is that Daybreak was one of the few communities that was able to really power through that. I mean, I think during some of those really bad years, 2010, 2011, something like 25% of all the homes in Salt Lake County were being built in Daybreak.
Yeah.
A lot of what happens in those bad markets for housing is there's what economists call a flight to quality. So people never want to make a bad choice, but especially when times are tough and the economy's in a tough spot, people don't want to make a bad choice.
Yeah.
And so what Daybreak was able to do, because fortunately by that point in time, we had a lot of the community, the big pieces were on the ground.
Yeah, the lake is there.
Yeah, the lake is there, and you have a whole neighborhood and a half, and people are like, okay, I can see that this is going to be a cool place. And when you build a place that is built to last, it's not based on a fad or a trend or something like that. And the architecture and the way that the community is put together, people see that, and it provides them with a level of comfort and safety, because not only does it resonate with the way that they want to live, but it resonates with the neighborhoods that were built 100 years ago and are still the places that people want to live.
Yeah.
So it represents a smart investment for a lot of home buyers.
Yeah. I like the phrase resonate with the way people want to live.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go right to you and
Okay.
your personal story, because you live in Daybreak, but you don't just live in Daybreak. You've been here for a long time in a number of different homes.
Yeah.
Talk about being a resident here, what it means to live in this area, and what it's like, and some of the favorite things that maybe you like to do with your family.
Yeah. I mean, we've compared it, when I have friends and family that visit, it's like living in a resort town, it's like being on vacation at home.
Yeah.
Because you have so many of these things that you can go and do. I mean, I love to take my kids, out on a paddleboard or on a kayak on the lake. I do spend a lot of time, mountain biking, with the trails and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's just, the opportunities to get outside. We have an organization here called Live Daybreak that's a nonprofit that puts together, concerts and big events. And we have a big summer concert series. And so every Friday and Saturday night in the summertime, you can, walk down to Soda Row. You can grab a bite to eat and go bring your blanket out on the lawn and watch a band play. And so there's just so much that goes on here that really is such a huge draw for people. And you do feel like you're almost on vacation because there's so much to do here, right here in this neighborhood. And I think you mentioned the homes that I've lived in. When I first moved here, I had one kid and another one on the way, and so and that was I was a lot younger back then, and so we bought the home that we could afford at that point in time. And as the family grew, we outgrew the home and needed something a little bit bigger, more bedrooms and things like that, a little bit bigger yard. And I think that too is one of those really kind of fundamental things about Daybreak that is really compelling, is this mix of housing. So, everything from really cool, studio apartments up to, the grand estate homes that are $2 million that are on the lake, and everything in between is available here in Daybreak. So really, if someone wanted to, they could, start out with their first apartment here in Daybreak, and they could stay here their whole lives. And the nice thing about that is your kids don't have to go find new friends. You can still go to the same grocery store. You can, the place you get your hair done, whatever. You can stay in that same community. And I think for some people, and there's a lot of people like me who've done that, that's pretty compelling to be able to do that if you want to. Because it doesn't require you to completely, upend your life. And that's one of the aspects when we talk about sustainability, which is kind of a big word that gets thrown around. That's maybe one of the pieces of that story that gets missed, is the opportunity that you have to, stay in a relatively small area. And I think that's pretty cool. And I think it's pretty unique.
Well, every time we, get into a new part of the development, it's amazing to see what's going on, and the creativity is really inspiring. You said something about, needing more space, maybe a little bit more of a yard. And I remember when we started here, that was the one thing that was jarring for a lot of people, like, where's my yard?
Yeah.
I want to do something just off the cuff, and hopefully it doesn't put you on the spot too much. I'll help out, but instead of a big yard, kind of the idea is to bring people out to these community places and spaces, right? There's so much here in Daybreak, from the trails and all those kind of things. But I mean, if we were just to make a quick list, you've got trails. You've got Ochre Lake, which you can fish in. You can paddleboard.
Don't forget the Duffy boat. You can go for a ride on the boat with the captain. That's cool.
I've never done that.
You're going to have to try that.
We've got parks. The parks here with the equipment is not only creative, but just phenomenal, the scale of it all. There's ducks everywhere, which is beautiful and awesome. Help me out here. We've got basketball courts, volleyball courts, and in this new side in Highland Park, there are things that I've never even pictured or imagined before. With the new
the water course.
Well, there's the water course that's coming, but the what do you call where the biking trail?
Oh, the loop.
But there's the loop, but then there's the spoke.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
These things that you just don't find anywhere else.
Yeah.
Like, it's exclusive to here. Have we missed anything that
I mean,
needs
probably,
mention?
but I mean, I think that's a pretty good list. And I think, what we try to do with these spaces is really, exactly like you said, if a lot of people are used to living sort of in a suburban scale, neighborhood with a big yard and things like that. And what we do is we create a lot of these places. We use a planning principle called the 5-minute rule, where we try to put, something, whether that's a park or a swimming pool or the lake, within a 5-minute walk of your house. And what that means too, I think, is we have what we call free-range children here. So it's the olden days when they can say, bye mom, I'm gonna go play with my friends, and you feel comfortable and safe because you know they're not gonna have to cross a busy street. You know that they're gonna be close enough that they're, you feel comfortable with it, and then they come back when they're done. And so, that's really what we've tried to create here. And so a lot of those, really unique places, and it is a trade-off for some people, but it's also, a different lifestyle that allows you, I think, access to more. That trade-off, I think you actually win because you get more of these unique places and spaces rather than just having, an extra, few hundred square feet of grass in a backyard that, by the way, you have to mow and take care of.
Well, and not only that, but in talking to some of our architects, some of the pillars they talk about is safety, the feeling of community, and connectivity.
Yes.
When you talk about this 5-minute rule, that's all about connectivity. But not only that, but front porches connect people to others outside or to their neighbors, which is super important. That also increases the safety, when people are watching out for one another. But the thing that you really can't, if you're just looking for any home anywhere, like, community isn't guaranteed.
Right.
But you can build an infrastructure where it can organically grow and flourish. And I think that's what we see here.
Yeah, absolutely. It often, if you build the type of place with all of the things that you mentioned, those are sort of the ingredients to community, right? So if you want community to be present, meaning that neighbors know and trust each other, they hang out, they're in clubs, they do dinner parties, garden parties, whatever it is, or they go to the events together. This type of social infrastructure, if you will, the porches, the walkable nature of the community, the parks nearby, that's where you meet your neighbors. And if those things aren't in your neighborhood, then you might meet them when you're out sitting in your front yard, but in a lot of neighborhoods that aren't like this, people just don't do that anymore. Yeah. And so those things are there to really kind of facilitate those connections and help them happen.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about kind of where things are going. We've talked about some of the past and some of the great things that have happened, but there's more to come right around the corner.
So, believe it or not, there's still about 7,000 or 8,000 homes left to be built in Daybreak. Oh, wow. People ask me all the time, are you done yet? And I'm like, no, they're still going. Yeah. So we'll continue to do that. And so you'll continue to see, the same great neighborhoods, year after year that we've been building for the last 15 years. We'll do little tweaks here and there, but we'll see a lot of the same, kind of stuff. But I think what's really exciting and what I think people are really going to be, excited to see us start to roll out over in the coming years is the urban center. So this is the area that is, right next to the Mountain View corridor, and the Trax line comes right into it. And so this has been, we call it the hole in the donut because all of the, land around it is getting developed, and we've kind of left this piece for something special. But, we have a real problem in the Salt Lake Valley with growth. And what that means is that, those of us that live here in Daybreak, we sometimes refer to it as a food desert because we have to drive really far to go to a good restaurant. Oh, yeah. And a lot of people who, work someplace else, they work in an office job or something else, their commute is, it's long, and it's getting longer, as the valley grows, and we're much more dependent on I-15. And so what's going to be cool about this urban center is the opportunity to what we call kind of rebalance the valley. So we're going to bring jobs closer to where people live. Mm-hmm. We're going to bring, all the things that people like to do, in a downtown area, great restaurants. There's some really cool amenities that I can't talk about yet.
Okay. We'll talk about that off camera.
We'll talk about that off camera. But, some really cool things that will give people, even more options of things to do in the neighborhood. but also the opportunity for those that want to actually live in that type of an environment where you could potentially walk to work, you could walk to the restaurant on a Saturday night, you could walk to your yoga class or something like that you like to do, your kid's school maybe. But it basically takes the walkability that we have in Daybreak now, and it's even more intense in that way because you really start to get this mix of uses that creates this vibrant type of place that, again, people really want to be there because you have all of these different things to do, and it's a place that's just really alive, even more than what Daybreak is today.
Well, and just around the corner, and we may have mentioned this before, but we've got the water course that's going to be happening. That's not like Ochre Lake, but
Right.
it's a water feature that will allow some of the same opportunities, right? Talk about what that's going to look like.
Well, what we learned from listening to our residents about the lake was they loved it. What they loved most about it was being able to walk around the trails, getting in a boat or on a stand-up paddleboard and getting into the water. And so what we wanted to do was create more opportunities for those experiences. And so the main difference between Ochre Lake and the water course is the water course isn't as big and broad as a lake. It's more of a channel, but it's longer. And so, there's more opportunities for actually more people to live near it or live right on it. There'll be some opportunities where you have homes that, come right up to the water's edge, which is something we didn't do before. And so we're really excited about that. And we think it's going to be, basically take what we did with Ochre Lake and just on steroids. It'll be awesome.
Yeah, take all the feedback that you've got and just be like, well, let's implement it in all these different ways. That's really cool.
Exactly.
Really cool, just the amount of time that it takes to develop this. You have the ability to go, well, what did we learn in this village? Let's make it better. Let's continue. And then, you're still just, the overall effect is just improvement, obviously, with all the different amenities. And, the good thing is that even the amenities that you started with are still fantastic. They still are great, which speaks to the sustainability we've talked about.
Yeah, I mean, just as you add people, you need to, continue that so that things don't get overcrowded. So as we add people, we'll continue to add great amenities over the years.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time to talk to our audience watching or listening. And this has been another episode of Room to Room here with Cameron Jackson, and we'll see you on the next one.